Hi guys, BTC Gambler back again. Listen, this is part 3 or 3-part video for the Alphaverse setup. So this is the third video and probably one of the most important videos actually. So once the first video was all about what was all the prerequisites required if you wanted to run Alphaverse. What's required from you, what are your prerequisites, what's your expected level of knowledge. The second video was an end-to-end build guide with full instructions how to set up and build Alphaverse for yourself. And this third and final video is a video, it's great, now I've got Alphaverse up and running, what do I do on it? And that's what this video is all about. I want to achieve one main objective today, and that main objective is for me, if I can get you to think differently about gambling, then I've achieved something today. I want you to think very, very differently about gambling. So first off, gambling should only be done with funds that you can afford to lose, guys. So there is no guarantees in life, okay? If you are going to do this, please go into it with your eyes wide open. Running Alphaverse is very different to running any other form of gambling. And it's my job to teach you, how to use this. Because the analogy I can give you is that, let's say you've just learnt to drive a car and suddenly you've been given the keys to drive a 1,000-mile long train. It requires very, very different skill sets in order to do it. But there's loads of things that you can do to protect yourself. Following this video, there will be a bunch of videos showing how you can run everything in simulation before you attempt to gamble any of your own money. Because you've got to think that Alphaverse is just a framework, okay? You can run any of the originals games on here. Anything that's on Prove Be Fair that runs on a server seed, you can run here on Alphaverse. But it's got a few added extras and bonuses that are simply not available via the casino, like the ability to novel forms of gambling, martingale, delayed martingale, Pirelli, various forms of things. So bear with me a second, I've got one bot stopped and I'll be back. Now if you've followed my guide up to this point here, and if you haven't, please I'll ask you to go back and watch the previous 2 videos associated to this. And if you haven't done the prerequisites, please do that as well. 1, you won't be able to get access to the software if you don't do those things anyway. And 2, I'm going to say some things with the assumption that you've got the knowledge already. You should know that Alphaverse is all written in JavaScript. It runs on Node.js. And I'm running this on Ubuntu Linux. Yeah, there's a server and you've got lots of clients. And inside those clients, we run multiple screens. One screen is running a client piece of software that talks to the master server with its status. And we have a dice bot which basically runs the code. And that's the bit that we're going to focus on today, because that's what are we actually running. Yeah, the Alphaverse framework would do whatever it's designed to do, which is ultimately allows you to play each account as if they've got a much larger balance. But you've got a shared recovery pot and it moves it around as and when it needs. Now you should know this already. I shouldn't need to explain. There'll be highlighted green here. So I've got a large recovery pot there. And that's the fundamental principles that we're going to cover today. And this is how I want you to think differently about gambling. So first we need to make a comparison, because if we look at the way that gambling is done at the moment, if you go onto a casino, you put some money in there, there's always a house edge. The house is ultimately going to win. You may have the occasional win and great and feel good about that, and then you go on the next 10 times and lose all your money. It's down to pure chance. With the edge skewed towards the casino, you're severely disadvantaged. So in effect, they're throwing the odds at you. They have a house edge, and someone as low as literally 1%. Like dice, for example. Dice has a 1% house edge. Now, if you're playing on the slots, that could be could be as high as 4% house edge, if not more. But there's always a house edge. And this is where I want you to think very, very differently from this, because we're going to take a scientific approach to this. And your best friend will be Excel. Because fundamentally, that's what we're doing. We're playing with numbers here, okay? And we're going to look at this very, very differently, okay? Because what I want to do, I want to throw odds back at the casino, not them throw odds at me. Now that won't make any sense at the moment until I explain what I mean by that, because they're just words, and I'm going to explain what that is. So, despite Dragon Tower having a 2% house edge, as we can see here, I've calculated out what the house edge is for each level. So I'm not going to explain the mechanics of Dragon Tower. I'm going to assume you know how to play that game and know the mechanics of it. But no, it's obviously got different levels: easy, medium, hard, expert and master. I made a mistake in some previous videos calculating out the house edge, and I thought it was skewed, but I worked out what I had done wrong and I've rectified it, and it is a 2% house edge game. You think to yourself, why don't I play dice, which is a 1% house edge game, say, over a 2% house edge game? And there's one really important reason, and that's the win chance. So if you put Dragon Tower on hard mode and you play it in just one row, literally you get two columns. It's 50-50. It's really truly a 50-50 odds game. And the way the house edge works is they only pay out 1.96 of your bet amount, and that's what gives them that's the 98% RTP or 2% house edge. The house edge is built into the payout, not into the server seed, the client seed, or anything like that. Provably fair is truly provably fair, and it's truly random. When you take a game that has true 50-50 odds and only two possible outcomes, it becomes much harder for the casino to throw really impossible odds back at you. If you take the game dice, for example, you can have a range from 0.01 to 99.99. Now theoretically there should be a 100 and a 0 as well. I don't think I've ever seen them. But there's 10,000 possible bet outcomes within dice. I have no idea why it's called dice either, because it's got nothing to do with dice. It is a random number between 0 and 100 to two decimal places, which is 10,000 possible outcomes from the bet. And I have seen extreme events in an infinite seed with an infinite possibilities. An infinite number of things can happen an infinite number of times, and that's the problem when you're dealing with infinity, because if you understand how the server seed works and how the betting works on a server seed, casino create their seed, the client creates their seed, they get merged together. The server seed is hashed, so that means it's hashed using SHA-256. That generates the master seed, and then each bet along the position moves on a nonce position, and you have something called a cursor as well. Now if you've got those three outcomes, you can mathematically calculate, and they give the formula on the website how they calculate the raw output for every single game from that random number generator, which is truly random. So I'm not going to cover in this video, but I have fully deciphered how all that works, and I've actually recreated my own version of the casino. And as I said, there'll be later videos that will complement this video, because the last thing I want you guys to do is lose money. That would devastate me. I don't want you to lose money. So this spreadsheet here took me a long time to put together. I will share this with you. You can have this spreadsheet. And if we look at the main page here, what we're saying here is, when you're betting, especially when you're betting to the extreme, you get into the realms of complete and utter unknown. And what I wanted to do was take away that unknown, the uncertainty, the doubt, the fear, and turn that into statistical analysis, and then based my betting off that. And I used Excel as the formula for all of this. So what we're defining here on the main page is what our start balance is. You can ignore this figure at the moment. If you're manually putting what this would be, we calculate what the base bet is, but we're not using it in that context here. So the base bet is what your base bet is going to be, what your lowest bet is going to be, what the win payout is going to be, which is 1.96, and how much we're going to add on every loss for martingale for full recovery, which is, in this instance, in order to cover, because it only pays out 1.96, we have to add 104.2% on every loss in order to gain full recovery. Hopefully I could demonstrate that in a moment. But they're the only main bits. This is a calculated field. It tells you what the max loss streak is going to be, and you can use that information, because in this tab down here where we've got odds and probabilities, I've calculated out what the chances of that actually happening is. So you can go into these games with your eyes wide open. You can adjust these figures based on what your own level of risk is going to be, and you throw odds back at the casino. Do you remember I said I want to switch things on its head? This is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm giving the casino the odds, not them giving me the odds. So this base bet is actually in TRX. So 1 TRX is about 12 cents today. So 0.003 of 1 TRX is 10 thousandths of 1 cent. It's really minuscule amounts, guys. So in order to throw back really, really big odds back at the casino, we need to start betting very, very low. But we then always say this to everybody, you know, when you're gambling this way, one of the biggest Achilles heels for every gambler is greed. Greed will get most people, and this is where I'm saying stop thinking like that. If you want to increase your earning capabilities with a solution like Alphaverse, then rather than increase your bet size, you increase the number of bots. So you increase the number of clients basically, and then you stick to the same bet amount. So you're not increasing your risk. So I say scale out. So increase the number of clients rather than scaling up by increasing the amount that you bet. And that way you have the same amount of risk on every single account. Does that make sense? So we're going to scale out rather than scale up, and we're going to throw back almost impossible odds back at the casino, and then the level of risk is the same across all bots. Now, I have done really detailed studies around very long-winded max loss streak calculations on Dragon Tower, and I've done it on dice, and I've done it on lots of games. If you leave something long enough, you will see such extreme events. If you knew, you probably would never gamble. You probably never would. The objective here is that if you're throwing back at such impossible odds, at some point, somewhere, sometime in the future, that if it does crash, you'd have made far more money than you lose. Let me show you what I've done here. So this number here, max loss 29, I have run, with no joke, over 1 trillion, that's 1,000 billion, and a billion with a capital B is 1,000 million, test bets on Dragon Tower to work out what the max loss streak I could possibly see on a 50-50 win chance. And I have never been able to get it above 28. Now, I'm not saying here right now that could never happen, but it's something, no matter how much data attempts I try at this, I cannot get it to go above that figure. Let's go back to my screen here. I'm running Dragon Tower. I'm running 50-50 win chance. Hard mode. 1 egg, don't change position. You know, it really is truly 50-50 odds. Every time it loses, I had 104.2% on each loss, and then at some point it's going to win, and I'm going to recoup back all my money. And I've covered up to 29 losses. And if we go back to our spreadsheet here, there's a lot to cover in this spreadsheet. It's taking me a long time to put it together. So first and foremost, what are the odds and probabilities of that happening? So you bear in mind what will have to happen. If we go into the validity checker here, this is it's got a load of junk data in here, guys. I've been playing around with this lot. So I've got a start balance of 10 TRX per account, and I have a recovery report of 33,200, which is magnitude much larger. And what Alphaverse does is, you know, it will detect a bus and it would tip over using the chat tip function to tip across funds from one account to the other for recovery. So what happens here, if we put that to 0, for example, it would crash here, and at this point it would call the recovery pot. I want you to get this right in your head here. So 16th bet, yeah, so 16 losses in a row, it loses. It moves on to the 17th bet. Is there enough funds in the balance to do the 17th bet? And if there is, it makes that bet. And then it moves on to the 18th bet, and that will return back there's not enough funds. So rather than crashing out, the bot will just get an API response back saying there's not enough funds, and it just sits there trying the same bet over and over again, and eventually Alphaverse would tip across the recovery pot to it, and it will recover. And when we add the recovery pot back in there, so if I put the recovery pot back in there, you can see we'd have a balance there, and that we can see the next bet was calculated right throughout until it works out where it's going to crash, and it can make the 29th bet, and it will foul on the 30th bet. So it means I have to reach 29 losses in a row and move to the 30th bet, which is unable to do. And let's look at the odds and the probability of that. So the chance of it reaching the 30th bet is 1 trillion to 1 odds. Those are the odds that I am throwing back at the casinos. Those are the odds that I am comfortable with. See how I switched that around? I'm giving the casino the odds, not them giving me the odds. Me in control here. So to be absolutely clear, I'm just going to go back to this validity checker, I'm going to show you the code in a moment, and you can see what I've done. I've changed it in Excel to reflect exactly what's happening, and we'll have a look at the button as well, and we can watch and do a screenshot, and you will see everything matches through right up until the 8th decimal place. This is calculated to perfection, and we will see in real betting a true reflection of this data from Excel manifesting itself into true betting using JavaScript and coding and maths. If I wanted to do full martingale from bet position 1, I would need a much larger recovery pot than 33,200. Off the top of my head, I think it's around about 280,000 is required, so that's a lot. So, this would lend itself really well if somebody wanted to take Alphaverse and run it as their own syndicate. That was my plan, was to build up a syndicate. Let's go back to my screen. Was to get to 1,000 bots and then build up a syndicate from there onwards. And in fact, there was a private group in my Discord server where we was talking about building out a syndicate. And if you worked it out individually, you won't have to commit so much. Okay, and there was a whole bunch of terms and conditions around the syndicate, but we're not quite there yet because it's a huge amount of work. So I've got to 316, and my intention was to get that to 1,000, but that has been a lot of work, and I've hit performance and bottleneck issues that would mean that I'll probably have to be closer to 3,000 bots to 2,000 to really get the betting where I need it to be. At the moment, at 2.36 million bets per hour. To run this as a syndicate, that needs to be around about 10 million bets an hour. 10 million. It just seems every account I'm adding there is just slowing things down. So I thought the limitation was my end, but I think it's the casino end, which may be, I don't know yet. There's still some unknowns within this. I spent a number of days in my data center doing some major upgrades, including the networking and everything, and no, it hasn't improved the performance. It has actually slightly, and it's brought around some increased stability, but it hasn't actually solved the underlying performance issue. We should be around about 3.16 million bets an hour at the moment, and we're woefully short of that. But either way, that's set aside. I've got no qualms if anybody else wants to set up a syndicate. It's not in my interest to prevent anybody from doing that sort of thing. Or if you're wealthy enough, you could solo run this yourself. Or you could do what I'm doing, is basically building it up. I'm going to just quickly show you the code. So this is what we're running. This is running Dragon Tower Martingale version 15. Now, I don't want you to be daunted by this because there's so much code in here that is related just purely to Alphaverse and has nothing to do with the actual dice pot that's running, what the code we're running. So I don't want to overwhelm you too much, but some key metrics here. So these are the global variables that we set. So like the bet delay. Here we're setting it where it says difficulty index, setting it to 2. It's telling that we're going to run in hard mode in Dragon Tower. If we want it in easy mode, then you change it to 0. It explains it here. A number of eggs. So it says egg amount, but it's basically how many rows we're going to go up. Okay, so we're just going to go 1 row. And what the base bet is, as I said, it's 0.0003 of 1 TRX. And the reason I'm using TRX is because TRX is cheap, it's fast, and it's stable. Okay, price does fluctuate, but nowhere near as much as the other currencies. It was verging on close to being a stable currency. And yeah, and all this other stuff is just related to the actual. So even though this code looks complicated, the actual betting is literally from this section here to this section here. It's tiny, guys. It's tiny. If you come from the world of Dicebot and Lure, you will recognise a lot of this. You're just very, very basic functions and really simple. I mean, you can do an awful lot within this. So we're saying here that what do we do on a win and what do we do on a loss? Okay, really as simple as that. So we're saying here that I'm using what we call delayed martingale. And in a minute I'll go back to the spreadsheet and explain what that means. So basically I'm betting 0.0003 until it hits 4 losses in a row. Then after 4 losses in a row it starts doubling down again, and then if it wins it goes back to the base bet of 0.003, and that's throwing back the 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds back at the casino, 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds, and that's basically it. That is really that simple. So even though the code looks complicated, a lot of it you won't really touch because it's all related to the functions of how Alphaverse works and not anything to do with the betting. It's just simply the do bet function is where you really need to focus on. Where you might change is the base bet amount, or if you wanted to play a different game, you want a different mode. And the other important metric here is this one here, increase in loss. Because I know that this looks really weird if you've never seen this before, but if I said times 104.2% on a decimal number in JavaScript, something funky happens and it doesn't quite match up in the Excel spreadsheet numbers. It took me a long time to work out that there was a problem with floating point calculations using percentages in JavaScript. I had to convert it to decimal, and you just have to take my word for it at this moment in time, but you will see it will make perfect sense. In order to add 104.2%, 104.2% on each loss, that equates to 2.042. So you're timesing it by 2.042, which is exactly the same as 104.2%. It takes a little while to get your head round, but if you don't do it that way, it doesn't exactly calculate out, and it may only be minusculely out, but by the time it gets to the 29th bit out, it's wildly out. So that's probably the only funky thing in here that's a little bit strange, but that's just the way it seemed to be a JavaScript limitation, and it's the only way I could get it working. So let's go back to the spreadsheet. I said to you, I'm running the first 4 bets on the base bet, 0.003, and then it starts doubling down from that point onwards. And that's basically the bet. First bet is 0.003. If it loses, next bet 0.003, 0003, until the fourth one. And after that one, it starts doubling down from there. And as we can see, we're pulling through. In Excel, it works absolutely perfectly fine. So if we was to take a snapshot, we would want to see these numbers literally to the decimal place matched through. And we can do that. Right guys, so what I do, I've got a window open here. We're showing one of the bots that's running the betting using exactly that code I showed you just now. It's running exactly that. What I'm going to be looking for is we get a reasonable loss streak so we can see it matches through. See there, it went to 6. And we can see the bet size here. I'll wait for one half decent one and I'll bring you back. Right, I've been waiting too long guys, so I'm just going to take a snapshot of this little bit of streak of data here. Did actually only go to -5. You can see it errored out, and you can see it's running the Dragon Tower V15 as I said before. That's what it's running. Oh, there's a better one. Right, there's a better one. Okay guys, so with the magic of OBS, I've overlaid that across the spreadsheet here. And what we're expecting to see is an exact replica of the betting data simulation within Excel against the actual real betting on a casino using the code. And this is the only way you can really truly verify that you've done your maths correct, because it's very easy to get it wrong. We start off with a win, so 0.003 would be the next bet, which it is. So that matches there. The next bet would be 0003, matches there. 003 matches there. The 003 there again. And then the fifth bet, fifth loss in a row, 61260, 61260. Then 12093, 12093. Then 255440. 255440, and then 521608, 521608. Tell you guys, this is mathematically pure. I think it's one of the reasons I like computing so much, because they do exactly what you tell them to do. So I'm confident in the numbers. Now, one of the biggest questions that I'm always asked, some of it like really kind of like frustrates me, to be honest with you, is like, I give away the maths, I do the calculations, I determine the odds that I'm comfortable with, and then people come back and say to me, what if I decrease the bet size, what if I shared that part across, different accounts. And when they ask me questions like that, I just honestly think they don't get it, because it doesn't. You're always just going to increase your risk. You're just going to reduce your chances of winning if you give the casino a better edge. I stick to the maths that I know works for me. There is another extremity of this, where you could say, go in really high risk, but very high returns, expecting to lose, and but providing you win more than you lose, then that's a good result, right? But remember I said to you before, when you first start to drive this, you learn to drive a car, then you're given the keys to a 1,000-mile long train. That happens. Those events happen so fast, so quickly, so frequently that it's virtually impossible to get into a scenario where you're constantly winning. You may be periods where you're up and then you're down, and it's just like it's a lot of manhandling, and it just simply isn't worth it. I prefer a system where you set and you forget and you leave it and it runs by itself. If it takes all of your time and it doesn't give you freedom, then what's the point? What is the point? Yeah, the whole point of this is I want to be free. And the way that you be free is you build robust systems, you build such strong defences up with automation that requires almost no intervention at all. And then that gives you your time back, and that gives you your freedom. Anything else, I just don't personally understand. And one thing for certain, I am not saying my solution is right. And as I said to you before, this is a framework. I built the framework. What you run on it is entirely your own choice. Like what I run on it is entirely my choice. I run it the way I'm comfortable running it. I encourage people to run it the way they are comfortable running it. But what I will say is definitely simulate everything before you commit to spending any real money. So this is what I'm doing right now, and I hope it will make sense. But like I said, I'm not saying my solution is right. I am definitely not saying that. Okay, guys, so this is the formula that I'm working to at the moment. It's basically a complete replica of what you saw just now. Ignore those numbers at the moment, because what I'm doing is I actually started off here, which is where I am now, where I got 4 losses in a row. Okay, and I had 33,200 TRX as a recovery pot, and that's all I had, and I had nothing in the vaults. And I've been running it for some time now, and if we go back to my desktop, that's made 23,000 profit. Okay, 23,000 TRX profit. Now my intention is I want to gradually build up so that I can fully martingale. Now to get to the next level, I've done the maths already, and I calculated out that I need to increase the start balance on each bot to maintain the existing crash point from 10 to 27, which means that because I've got 316 accounts in there, I've got a total start balance of 8,532, and I need a recovery pot of 68,000, which is in order to cover up to 29 losses. So that means my target, I need to get my balance up to 76,532, and then when it's at that level, I can then adjust my code, and I have that code ready here in version 16. It's ready to go once my balance gets up, and all I've done here is in the do bet function adjusted. So rather than having one recovery bot of 68,000, I have 2 recovery pots of 34,000, which is the same amount. You just find that because it busts relatively frequently, and it just runs a lot smoother if you've got more than one recovery pot in play. So I split it in half. Fundamentally it's the same amount, and this little check here, if you win and if you've got the recovery pot in the balance, it will put it in the vault again, and this is how the vault is managed. It's just managed within the code, and again sometimes it automatically collects the rate back, and your balance, and as you can see how accurate the calculation is being on what the balance should be, and based on the bet amount and the payback to the 8th decimal place, as we see that match through in Excel from the screenshots. sometimes we'll find that can drift, and because we're calculating out to vault when the profit reaches 5, if that number drifts out, the calculation of the crash point will go out as well, because the way that it calculates the bust is because I've calculated out in the Excel spreadsheet what the balance will look like within a range. And so within the client config, there is something called a bust threshold, and we can look at the client config here. This is blank, and I've set here the bust threshold. So if the balance goes below 7, I know I've crashed. It really is as basic as that. It's not sophisticated. So if the code is written in such a way that we don't keep a tight rein of what the balance should be, especially when we're vaulting based on profit amount, then that calculation can be thrown out. So in order to keep that clean, it tends to get out. I've sometimes seen it go up like 16, 17, sometimes 18 in the balance, and it shouldn't be, because it's gone way above 5 profit, and it'd be for other factors. So what this is like, it's like as a clean-up mechanism to make sure that I'm always within the range. So if the balance is greater than 15 and the profit was less than 5, then vault the difference. This does actually need to change, because this needs to start balance as 27. Yeah, and that's fundamentally, that's all that's changed in here. So my plan is that once I get to -3, and that means I'm doing the base bet only on 3 accounts, that will actually wager a significant amount more and pay out a significant amount more profit. Right now it's really slow. It makes about 1,000 TRX, about $100 a day, which is a bit boring, to be honest, but hey, boring's good sometimes. But when I move to -3, so it's going to start betting from the 3rd loss in a row rather than the 4th one, which if you was to track the betting, it takes a lot even to get to 4th and then the 5th loss in a row. It's on a 50-50 odd chance. And then I've already calculated where I need to be to get to -2. I need a recovery pot of 147,000, and really this was miles out, but I said 280,000. I need 291, basically 300,000 if I wanted to do full recovery, so I was doing full martingale from the beginning, and that pays out a significant amount. That's my target, and I can do that just by letting it build up. I started off with a relatively small amount, money that I can afford to lose, has no impact on my life if I do lose it, and I will build it up slowly. And this is my thinking today. So everybody's asking me, what am I doing? What am I running? Here we are. This is exactly what I'm running right now. So I have a very clear goal and target in mind where I want to get to, but I didn't want to risk too much money on it. So I've risked what I'm comfortable with, willing to risk, and then I'll let it build up by itself. And so far, it's held up very, very strong. While we're waiting for other things, as you can see here, Visual Studio, because when you download Alphaverse, it comes with some code already, so writing code for gambling on Alphaverse isn't that easy. It's quite a specialist skill. There is a place in this world for developers to come and join the Discord as well, because there's loads of people with loads of ideas. And one of the things that I'll be doing in a video coming up very, very soon is how you can basically run all of Alphaverse in absolute turbo mode in full simulation, all using exactly the same mechanics as the casino, all provably fair. It would be identical to real betting, but on really, really super fast speeds. That will form the foundation of another video, so you can run whatever you want to run. Okay, so there's some examples in here. There's a basic martingale strategy for Dragon Tower. There's a syndicate one. There's lots of Dragon Tower actually. There's a dice pot one in here as well. I do have other games. I've got Limbo. I've got, you can see these are not all on Alphaverse, by the way. These are all backups. So I've got Dragon Tower. I've got Dice Pot. I've got Diamonds Poker. I have even got the Infinity Code on there. Anyway, I've got some templates for some games. And all I'm saying is there is a market out there for developers to come in, and I don't think anybody that's joining Alphaverse would expect that to be for free. There is definitely an opportunity for developers who want to come in and develop strategies and coding around games and then rightly charge for that. When I first started out with Alphaverse, I paid a developer to write code. I'd sort of design how I want it to look, and then they go and write the code for me. But over the years I've learned how to do it, but I've still got a lot to learn myself. I'm no expert in everything. I don't think anybody could be an expert in everything. Actually, there's only one person I know who's an expert in everything, and I think we all know that is the creator of Qbot. He's the master, he's the magician. I'm kind of ready to wrap this video up, and I hope it's helped you to think differently about gambling, using statistics, mathematics, turning it around. You throw the odds back at the casino. You chose your own level of comfort. Don't let the casino dictate that. You're the one in charge, in control. So I really hope this has been useful for you guys. I hope this has been of value to you. If it has done, please smash that like button, subscribe, and all those lovely things. Yep. Not that I have a great passion to increase my YouTube base, but I do think Alphaverse is screaming out for a wider audience, to be honest with you. I think, what we really need more than anything else is more developers. People that can help develop this platform. We can attract some smart, intelligent people, not only on this channel, but in Discord. People we can communicate with, the developers. There will be a market there for you. There will be people screaming out for you this. I will provide the platform. They will come up with the ideas, and we need the coders to come up and finalise the code for this. If any of you are interested in that, you just reach out to me, and you can have access to codes, and I can give you examples. I can show you what I do know. Anybody that wants something written, I think we will create a subgroup within the Discord server for Alphaverse for the developers, and just for the developers alone, and people can go in, they can request developers time, and there will be a market out there for people that will want things developed. Right guys, I'm really going to end the video there, and I really hope that has been useful, and please smash that like button, and I'll speak to you all again very, very soon.